Welcome back to another quiz. We got 80 more questions. Let's get started. 1. Who was the father of King David? Solomon, Saul, Jesse, or Samuel? Jesse. 1 Samuel 16:1. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I'm sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." 2. Which of the following is not one of the 12 tribes of Israel? Asher, Benjamin, Manasseh, or Reuben? Manasseh. Genesis 49:28. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said to them when he blessed them, giving each the blessing appropriate to him. 3. Who's credited with writing the book of Revelation? Peter, John, Matthew, or Paul? John. Revelation 1:1. The revelation from Jesus Christ which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John. 4. Which Old Testament prophet confronted King Ahab and Queen Jezebel? Elijah, Jeremiah, Isaiah, or Ezekiel? Jesse. 1 Samuel 16:1. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I'm sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." 2. Which of the following is not one of the 12 tribes of Israel? Asher, Benjamin, Manasseh, or Reuben? Manasseh. Genesis 49:28. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said to them when he blessed them, giving each of the blessing appropriate to him. 3. Who is credited with writing the book of Revelation? Peter, John, Matthew, or Paul? John. Revelation 1:1. The revelation from Jesus Christ which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John. 4. Which Old Testament prophet confronted King Ahab and Queen Jezebel? Elijah, Jeremiah, Isaiah, or Ezekiel? Ezekiel. 1 Kings 18:18. Elijah replied, "I have not made trouble for Israel, but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals." 5. What was the name of the giant defeated by David? Samson, Oga, Delilah, or Goliath? Goliath. 1 Samuel 17:49. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. 6. Who was the mother of Samuel? Ruth, Sarah, Hannah, or Elizabeth? Hannah. 1 Samuel 1:20. So in the course of time, Hannah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, saying, "Because I asked the Lord for him." 7. What's the first book of the New Testament? Mark, Matthew, Luke, or John? Matthew 1:1. This is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. 8. Which king is known for his wisdom in the Bible? Saul, Solomon, David, or Hezekiah? Solomon, 1 Kings 3:12, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. 9. Who was thrown into a den of lions? Joseph, Moses, Noah, or Daniel? Daniel, Daniel 6:16. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you. 10. What was the name of the sea that Moses parted to lead the Israelites out of Egypt? Red Sea, Sea of Galilee, Dead Sea, or Mediterranean Sea? Red Sea. Exodus 14:21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided. 11. Who was the first king of Israel? David, Solomon, Saul, or Rehoboam? Saul. 1 Samuel 10:1. Then Samuel took a flask of olive oil and poured it on Saul's head and kissed him, saying, Has not the Lord anointed you ruler over his inheritance? 12. Which prophet was swallowed by a great fish? Elisha, Ezekiel, Jonah, or Daniel? Jonah. Jonah 1:17. Now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. 13. What was the name of Abraham's wife? Rachel, Rebecca, Sarah, or Leah? Sarah. Genesis 17:15. God also said to Abraham, As for Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. 14. Which book of the Bible states, Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels? Romans, Galatians, 1 Corinthians, or Hebrews? First Corinthians 13:1. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. 15. Who was the first martyr of the Christian church? Paul, James, Stephen, or Peter? Stephen, Acts 7:59-60. While they were stoning him, Stephen prayed, Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. Then he fell on his knees and cried out, Lord, do not hold this sin against them. When he had said this, he fell asleep. 16. Who succeeded Moses as the leader of the Israelites? Caleb, Aaron, Joshua, or Eli? Joshua 1:1-2. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites. 17. Which disciple is known as the doubter because he questioned Jesus' resurrection? James, Thomas, John, or Matthew? Thomas. Matthew 26:15, and said, What are you willing to give me if I deliver him to you? And they counted out to him 30 pieces of silver. 18. What event occurred on the day of Pentecost, 50 days after Jesus' resurrection? The birth of the church. Acts 2:1-4. When the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place. Suddenly, a sound like the blowing of a violent wind came from heaven and filled the whole house where they were sitting. They saw what seemed to be tongues of fire that separated and came to rest on each of them. 19. Which book of the Bible contains the story of the Good Samaritan? Matthew, Luke, Mark, or John? Luke 10:30-37, the parable of the Good Samaritan. 20. Which king of Israel was known for his wisdom and building the first temple? Saul, David, Solomon, or Hezekiah? Solomon, 1 Kings 5:5. I intend therefore to build a temple for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord told my father David, when he said, Your son, whom I will put on the throne in your place, will build the temple for my name. 21. Which Old Testament character is famous for his coat of many colors? Isaac, Abraham, Joseph, or Jacob? Joseph, Genesis 37:3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. 22. Who wrote the majority of the letters, epistles in the New Testament? Peter, Paul, John, or James? Acts 13:9-10. Then Saul, who was also called Paul, filled with the Holy Spirit, looked straight at Elymas and said, You are a child of the devil and an enemy of everything that is right. 23. What's the name of the mountain where Moses received the Ten Commandments? Mount Nebo, Mount Zion, Mount Sinai, or Mount Carmel? Mount Sinai, Exodus 19:20. The Lord descended to the top of the Mount Sinai and called Moses to the top of the mountain, so Moses went up. 24. Which Old Testament prophet was taken to heaven in a whirlwind? Elijah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, or Daniel? Elijah, 2 Kings 2:11. As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. 25. Who was the first high priest of Israel? Aaron, Melchizedek, Eleazar, or Samuel? Aaron, Exodus 28:1. Have Aaron your brother brought to you from among the Israelites, along with his sons Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar, so they may serve me as priests. 26. In the parable of the prodigal son, what did the son demand from his father? His inheritance, a blessing, his freedom, or a job? His inheritance, Luke 15:12. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. 27. What's the name of the mountain where Jesus was transfigured? Sinai, Tabor, Zion, or Olivet? Tabor, Matthew 17:1-2. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. 28. Which judge of Israel fought against the Midianites and defeated them with 300 men? Samson, Deborah, Gideon, or Barak? Gideon, Judges 7:7. The Lord said to Gideon, With the 300 men that leapt I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. Let all the others go home. 29. In the book of Job, who were Job's 3 friends who came to comfort him during his suffering? Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. Job 2:11. When Job's three friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together. 30. Which woman in the Bible turned into a pillar of salt? Sarah, Rebecca, Lot's wife, or Daniel's wife? Lot's wife, Genesis 19:26. But Lot's wife looked back and she became a pillar of salt. 31. Who was the prophetess who judged Israel and led the Israelites to victory over the Canaanites? Deborah, Miriam, Esther, or Hannah? Deborah, Judges 4:4-5. Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at that time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes decided. 32. In the book of Ezekiel, what creature is described as having four faces, that of a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle? Cherubim, Nephilim, Seraphim, or Behemoth? Cherubim. Ezekiel 10:14. Each of the four had the face of a man, and on the right side of each was the face of a lion, on the left the face of an ox, and also had the face of an eagle. 33. In the Old Testament, who was a prophet that challenged 450 prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel? Elisha, Samuel, Moses, or Elijah? Elijah. 1 Kings 18:20-21. So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him. 34. Which New Testament letter does not mention the resurrection of Jesus Christ? 1 Corinthians, James, Philippians, or 1 Peter? James does not explicitly mention the resurrection of Jesus in its letter, though it refers to the faith that follows Jesus. 35. Which of the following kings of Israel ruled for only 7 days before his death? Saul, Ahaziah, Zimri, or Joash? Zimri, 1 Kings 16:18-20. As soon as Zimri saw that the city was taken, he went into the citadel of the royal palace and set the palace on fire around him. So he died, because of the sins he had committed. 36. In the book of Daniel, what was the name of the angel who appeared to Daniel after his 21 days of prayer? Gabriel, Raphael, Michael, or Uriel? Gabriel, Daniel 10:13. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, because I was detained there with the king of Persia. 37. What's the name of the city where Jesus turned water into wine? Nazareth, Bethany, Capernaum, or Cana? Cana, John 2:1-11. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. 38. Which Old Testament character wrestled with an angel and had his name changed to Israel? Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, or Joseph? Jacob, Genesis 32:28. Then the man said, Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. 39. What king of Israel was struck by an arrow while disguised in battle and later died from his wound? Jehu, Ahab, Josiah, or Saul? Ahab, 1 Kings 22:34. But someone drew his bow at random and hit the king of Israel between the sections of his armor. The king told his chariot driver, "Wheel around and get me out of the fighting. I've been wounded." 40. Which book in the Bible is known for its wisdom literature and includes the teachings of the teacher? Psalm, Ecclesiastes, John, or Acts? Ecclesiastes 1:1. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. 41. Who was the first judge of Israel? Deborah, Ehud, Gideon, or Othniel? Othniel, Judges 3:9-10. But when they cried out to the Lord, he raised up for them a deliverer, Othniel son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, who saved them. 42. In the book of Ruth, what was the name of Ruth's mother-in-law? Hannah, Sarah, Naomi, or Leah? Naomi, Ruth 1:2. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name Naomi, and the names of his two sons were Mahlon and Chilion. 43. Who was the Roman centurion that Jesus praised for his faith and healed his servant? Cornelius, Longinus, Julius, or unnamed? Unnamed. Matthew 8:10. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed and said to those following him, "Truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith." 44. What did God use to guide the Israelites by night during their journey in the wilderness? A pillar of fire, star, a cloud, or a red sword? Pillar of fire. Exodus 13:21. By day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or night. 45. What did King Hezekiah do to extend his life after being told he would die? Prayed to God. Isaiah 38:2-5. Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord. "Remember, Lord, how I have walked before you faithfully and with wholehearted devotion, and have done what is good in your eyes." And Hezekiah wept bitterly. 46. What were the names of the two thieves crucified alongside Jesus? Dismas and Gestas, Cain and Abel, Barabbas and Judas, or Peter and John? Dismas and Gestas, Luke 23:39-43. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. 47. Who was the king of Israel that consulted the witch of Endor before a battle? Saul, Solomon, David, or Rehoboam? Saul, 1 Samuel 28:7. Saul then said to his servants, "Find me a woman who is a medium, so I may go and inquire of her." 48. Who was the first person to be killed in the Bible? Abel, Adam, Cain, or Abel's son? Abel, Genesis 4:8. Cain said to Abel, "Let's go out to the field." And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. 49. Which New Testament book was written by the physician Luke? Matthew, Acts, Mark, or Revelation? Acts 1:1. In my former book, Theophilus, I wrote about all that Jesus began to do and to teach. 50. In the book of Revelation, how many angels were holding the 7 last plagues? 7, 4, 12, or 3? Seven. Revelation 15:1. I saw in heaven another great and marvelous sign, 7 angels with the 7 last plagues, last because with them God's wrath is completed. 51. Which king of Israel was famous for his reforms and efforts to restore the worship of God? Solomon, Hezekiah, Josiah, or Jehu? Josiah. 2 Kings 23:25. Neither before nor after Josiah was there a king like him who turned to the Lord as he did, with all his heart, with all his soul, and with all his strength, in accordance with all the law of Moses. 52. Who was the first person in the Bible to offer a sacrifice to God? Noah, Adam, Abel, or Cain? Abel. Genesis 4:4. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of his firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering. 53. In the book of Esther, which Persian king did Esther marry? Darius, Artaxerxes, Xerxes, or Cyrus? Xerxes. Esther 2:16. She was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. 54. In the Gospel of Matthew, which Old Testament prophecy is fulfilled by Jesus' birth in Bethlehem? He would be born in Bethlehem. Matthew 2:5-6. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. 55. In the book of 2 Samuel, who killed Abner, the commander of Saul's army? Joab, Asahel, Abishai, or Amasa? Joab. 2 Samuel 3:27. Now when Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside into the gateway, as though to speak with him privately, and there to avenge the blood of his brother Asahel. Joab stabbed him in the stomach, and he died. 56. What was the name of the Roman official who ordered the beheading of the Apostle Paul? Festus, Nero, Felix, or Pilate? Nero. 2 Timothy 4:6-8. For I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time for my departure is near. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. 57. Which Old Testament prophet confronted King David about his sin with Bathsheba? Nathan, Elijah, Isaiah, or Elisha? Nathan. 2 Samuel 12:7. Then Nathan said to David, you are the man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. 58. In which book of the Bible does God speak to Job out of a whirlwind? Psalms, Isaiah, Job, or Lamentations? Job. Job 38:1. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. He said, 59. Who was the first person to call God Jehovah Jireh, meaning the Lord will provide? Abraham, Isaac, Moses, or Jacob? Abraham. Genesis 22:14. So Abraham called the place the Lord will provide, and to this day it said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. 60. Who were the two sons of Zebedee who were also called sons of thunder? Peter and John, James and Peter, James and John, or Andrew and John? James and John. Mark 3:17. James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. To them he gave the name Boanerges, which means sons of thunder. 61. Who was the first king of Israel after Saul? David, Ishbosheth, Solomon, or Rehoboam? Ishbosheth, 2 Samuel 2, 8-10. But Abner son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth son of Saul and brought him over to Mahanaim. He made him king over Gilead, Ashuri, Jezreel, Ephraim, Benjamin, and all Israel. 62. Which Old Testament character saw a vision of a fiery furnace and the Son of God walking in it? Shadrach, Abednego, Meshach, or Daniel? Daniel 3:25, he said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." 63. Who was a prophet that predicted a famine during the reign of Claudius Caesar? Agabus, Joel, Amos, or Elisha? Agabus, Acts 11:28. One of them, named Agabus, stood up and through the Spirit predicted that a severe famine would spread over the entire Roman world. This happened during the reign of Claudius. 64. In the book of Judges, who killed the general Sisera by driving a tent peg through his skull? Deborah, Samson, Jael, or Barak? Jael, Judges 4:21. But Jael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep, exhausted. She drove the peg through his temple into the ground and he died. 65. Who was the high priest who served when Samuel was a child? Eli, Aaron, Zadok, or Eleazar? Eli, 1 Samuel 1:9. Once when they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh, Hannah stood up. Now Eli the priest was sitting on his chair by the doorpost of the Lord's temple. 66. Which Old Testament prophet saw a vision of 4 chariots coming out from between 2 mountains of bronze? Ezekiel, Daniel, Zechariah, or Isaiah? Zechariah. Zechariah 6:1-2. I looked up again, and there before me were 4 chariots coming out from between 2 mountains of bronze. 67. What did the Israelites use to mark their doorposts during the first Passover in Egypt? Salt, a lamb's blood, olive oil, or wine? Lamb's blood. Exodus 12:7. Then they are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the door frames of the houses where they eat the lambs. 68. Who was the king of Judah when the prophet Isaiah was called to be a prophet? Hezekiah, Ahaz, Uzziah, or Manasseh? Uzziah, Isaiah 6:1. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. 69. Who was the first high priest of Israel according to the book of Leviticus? Aaron, Phinehas, Eleazar, or Malachi? Aaron. Leviticus 8:1-2. The Lord said to Moses, "Take Aaron and his sons with him, and the garments and the anointing oil, the bowl for the sin offering, the 2 rams, and the basket containing the bread made without yeast." 70. In the book of Daniel, which king saw a hand writing on the wall during the feast? Belshazzar, Darius, Simon, or Cyrus? Belshazzar. Daniel 5:5-6. Suddenly the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall, near the lampstand in the royal palace, The king watched the hand as it wrote. 71. What was the name of the woman who became the wife of Boaz? Deborah, Ruth, Sarah, or Esther? Ruth. Ruth 4:13. So Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. Then he went to her and the Lord enabled her to conceive and she gave birth to a son. 72. In the book of Genesis, who was the first person to be described as a man of faith after Abel? Noah, Abraham, Enoch, or Seth? Enoch. Genesis 5:24. Enoch walked faithfully with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. 73. In the New Testament, who was the first apostle to be martyred? Peter, Stephen, James, or Paul? James. Acts 12:2. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with a sword. 74. Which Old Testament prophet had a vision of a wheel within a wheel? Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel, or Daniel? Ezekiel. Ezekiel 1:16. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. They sparkled like topaz, and all four looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel. 75. Which king of Israel sought the counsel of a medium after God stopped speaking to him? Solomon, Saul, Hezekiah, or Jeroboam? Saul. 1 Samuel 28:7. Saul then said to his servants, "Find me a woman who's a medium so I may go and inquire of her." 76. In the Gospel of Mark, who was the man who carried Jesus' cross to Golgotha? Simon, Nicodemus, Joseph, or Peter? Simon. Mark 15:21. A certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way in from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. 77. Who was the first man mentioned in the Bible to have been born of a woman? Adam, Cain, Abel, or Seth? Cain. Genesis 4:1. Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. 78. Who was the father of John the Baptist? Simeon, Joseph, Zacharias, or Levi? Zacharias. Luke 1:5-13. In the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah, who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah. His wife Elizabeth was also a descendant of Aaron. 79. Which apostle was known as the twin Didymus? Peter, Zephaniah, Thomas, or Philip? Thomas. John 11:16. Then Thomas, also known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." 80. Who was the last king of the northern kingdom of Israel? Hoshea, Jeroboam, Nicodemus, or Ahab? Hoshea. 2 Kings 17:1-2. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, Hoshea, son of Elah, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 9 years. And that's all our questions today. Put your score down below and share this with your friends and family, and we'll see you in the next one.